What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today we have got a review for you. Today we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about the CZ Shadow 2 Compact. Now the gun itself was incredibly hyped, and every time we've got a gun with a shitload of hype, I'm always nervous because I'm afraid I'm gonna get let down. In the case of this, it has a very huge amount of pros and a couple of cons, which we will get to. We thoroughly tested this.
How are you feeling preparing for putting your beloved CZ Shadow 2 Compact through the torture test?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little horrified. Iowa mud. Not only did we shoot a full 2,000 rounds through this of varying ammunition with varying magazines and varying shooters, I myself have about 1,500 through this. My wife shot this, my buddy Nick shot this, and even Twisted the Rapper shot this.
CZ Shadow 2 Compact. It's the too light.
This gun is an aluminum alloy frame. It has a 4-inch barrel, optics ready out of the box, fiber optic front with a blacked out rear. We actually took that off because the blacked out rear comes with the plate that covers the mounting system. We got a different mount on there to put an RMR Type 2, but you can see it in the footage. Comes with a Picatinny rail at the bottom, a cold hammer forged barrel, front slide serrations, a double single action trigger, which is very nice. We'll get into that in a minute. Aluminum grips with really good texture on them, 25 lens per inch on the front and the back, and two 15-round magazines, but obviously they can accept the full-size CZ magazines, which are very plentiful and very cheap, which is nice. It kind of reminds me a lot of the Glock mags. These have been around so long, they're reliable, they're durable, they're slick, they come in and out of the gun, and they're affordable and available, which can't be beat. Now it has ambi controls on the gun, the magazine release is swappable, and it does have a low pro safety on it coming out of the box. However, you can switch that up if you want. Now, one of the amazing things about this gun is how affordable it's supposed to be. However, prices right now are much higher than they are supposed to be because of how unavailable the gun currently is. So the prices you see may vary. The MSRP is $1,200, but they're coming out right now about $1,600 to $2,100. Now, the first shots we took this gun out and we ran just the iron sights. We also ran it with a light and without. So we had a Surefire X300 Ultra on it and iron sights the first time, and then we've also ran it with a light and a red dot, and then we've also ran it with just a red dot. So in every configuration, we have tested this. We also tested it in comparison to a lot of the other guns that are in its price point, which we'll talk about too. We're gonna have some comparisons with cheap guns and some expensive guns here in a little bit. Let's talk about the ergonomics, then we'll get into reliability, accuracy, speed, and then obviously some of the cons, then the comparisons. So first off with the ergonomics. I obviously love the ergonomics because it's exactly the same as a Shadow. When I bought this, I was really hoping it was just a small Shadow and they hadn't changed much, and I was absolutely right. First off, the beaver tail is really awesome, very comfortable and easy to get into. It pushes your thumb right up toward the manual safety, which I absolutely recommend. If you carry a gun with a manual safety, I at least recommend that you ride the safety. I've seen very good shooters knock the safety on guns tons of times and make the gun inoperable. All you have to do is simply ride your thumb on top of the safety, use it as a recoil control device, and you won't have that problem. That being said, it is a very low pro safety, so if you don't want to do that, you also don't have to, and it won't affect you while you carry. We have a relatively large slide release, which is similar to not only the Shadow, but obviously the P01, and then even the P07, which we'll be doing comparisons of in a second. So if you like those slide releases, same thing. Same trigger guard as well. I would even argue it's a little bit bigger and wider trigger guard than the P01. So if you want to use it with big gloves or mitts or stuff like that, like a winter carry gun, it would make for a great gun because of that. That's actually what I plan on using it for. And then we have a full Picatinny rail as opposed to just a partially milled one like on the P01, which makes it look a little nice. I don't know how functional that is. Maybe you can use some smaller lights if you want, but for the most part, it just kind of looks cool. Cold hammer forged barrel there, absolutely excellent quality from CZ as you'd expect, and it delivers some impressive accuracy, as we'll show you in a minute. As far as the slide serrations go, they are usable on the front and the rear. Slide serrations work well. You can operate the gun even if you have a optic on it and you don't have to bump the optic. That being said, the optic system works very well, and we had this RMR HD2 on there, and we were running the slide with the barricade with no issues. Now, the grips are very comfortable. Even my wife thought they weren't too aggressive. She actually really likes these. I actually prefer the lock grip palm swells because they're even more aggressive than this, but I think this is a good mix of carry and usability personally. Now, down here we have a little bit of a beveled mag well, so your 2 included 15 round mags go in and out of the gun super well. That's one of the things you'll get with these coated mags, is that they come out of the gun every time, all the time. As you can see in a minute, this gun has been covered in mud and sand, and all we did was clean it out, and it's still super functional, still super slick. And I would attribute that to good manufacturing and a good coating. Back here we have a combat hammer, which works very well because if you're running a double single action gun, there are situations where you might need to actually operate the hammer. So if you pull the gun out and you have a couple of seconds, you have to make an accurate shot, you can flip that into single action real quick, and you can have that 2.5 pound trigger to make super accurate shots at long distance. The sights were excellent, as I mentioned in the first shots video. Now, one of my favorite part about Shadows is their sight setup, and this has the exact same sight as the Shadow 2. So we have adjustable elevation and windage, so wherever your rear sight is, you can fix that. But what I really like up here is these pinched ears on the rear sight. Now, it doesn't seem like much. These kind of center your vision towards the front notch, or towards the notch, which brings you to the front sight. And I've always found this sight the fastest for me to acquire up close, which is where you're going to be shooting a handgun anyway. Now, as far as reliability goes, that's kind of what you all want to see. I would too if I was looking for a carry gun. And we shot Blazer Brass 115 grain, over 1,000 rounds of that through this gun with no malfunctions whatsoever, not only with the stock 15 round magazines, but the larger CZ75 mags, even some with some Terran tactical base plates that I use for competition. So you can have a 22+1 capacity on this gun and not blink an eye and not lose any reliability. We also shot 124 grain, 147 grain, and some actual frangible ammo as well, and some lower powered competition ammo. And all of it ran completely reliably with the stock spring, which not only I expected, but I assumed. Even with the 115 grain carry ammo, the critical defense that we ran through it, it had no problems, and it held up to the CZ Shadow 2 name. The Shadow 2 is probably the most reliable and best for the money competition gun that you can get out on the market, and I'm glad that they at least brought the reliability to this gun. Now, after that, we did torture test it to everyone's dismay on Instagram. I posted a little clip on Instagram, and people were freaked out that I would put such a beautiful gun in the mud and the sand. But the reality is, if it's a carry gun, it has to be used like a carry gun, and you might be in a gunfight at a kid's playground, you might drop your gun out of a boat into a pond, and you want to see if it still works. I've never been much for second guesses, so when in doubt, let her fly.
Oh my gosh. Oh! It's so dirty!
Give me a whole minute. That went so much worse than the other one. Wow. Well,
Got some algae.
this is gonna be a rough day for me. All right, let's see. Still works.
Oh my goodness.
Now, you guys are probably asking me why I don't load it and throw it in there, and it's because, I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable. Well, I missed the last one, but
Hey!
gun's rocking and rolling. All right, so CZ Shadow 2 compact with 10 rounds of Blazer Brass ammunition. We've been running this basically this entire review. Had a few different ammunition types, but this is the main one. It's been absolutely 100% up until now. I'm a little concerned. It went through the pond. I was pretty sure it would go through that. Sand is gonna be pretty rough on a gun with very tight tolerances, and mud is gonna be even worse. So one of the amazing things about the Shadow 2 is it's very accurate, very reliable mechanically, until we start inducing outside stuff. So let's find out. 10 rounds of Blazer Brass, load the gun up, I'm gonna decock it, lay it flat in the sand like that, push it in a little bit. Now, everybody wants me to cover the thing, but if you're gonna drop your gun in the sand, I think it's gonna end up more like that. We'll throw some on a little bit. Pull it out, see if it works. And no problem. Decock the gun again. And then we're gonna drop it on the other side, chamber side. And this time we're gonna smash it in there. So now we're gonna cover it up. Yep, give it a shake. Holy shit.
Do as we say, not as we do, people.
Right. Well, you know, this gun has been 100% reliable, even more so than the Echelon so far. We haven't put it in the mud yet, but I think one of the reasons for that is, in my personal experience, double action pistols are shockingly reliable, even in adverse conditions tests. And I think that's just because of the simplicity of the system. All right, so we got our 10 rounds of Blazer Brass, put our earplug in there so we don't blow up. And we're gonna do a mud test. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna drop it flat like you dropped it into a creek bed or something like that. And the second run, we'll fully submerge it.
Oh my goodness.
Round in the chamber, decock, thunk. Push it in there just a little bit. That's some thick ass mud.
It is.
All right.
Okay.
Try it. Like a fucking dream. Decock the gun. Now we're going for it. Thunk.
Oh. Oh my God.
So just a little bit of CZ there. We saw that coming.
Well, nothing has made it
Nothing's
through.
past this yet, yep. Kind of interesting. I gotta stop talking while I shoot. It's kind of interesting to see how it fails, though, in all fairness.
That is a good data point to know.
Looks like
Failure
all
to
fails.
extract.
So it will pass if you just drop it in there, but if you stick it in there like real hard, it's not gonna go. And every time I keep reinserting this mag, I keep pushing more mud in there. So yeah, the super thick full throttle mud did kill it. And the Echelon actually shot itself through it, and this one did not. However, this one does have trick tolerances. So, did pretty well till the end. Now, in my personal opinion, that was pretty impressive. It passed everything with flying colors except for the mud test, which, in all fairness, I think maybe my mud test's too hard because none of the guns we've ever had have passed the mud test. So, my bad on that. But I actually think the Shadow 2 did the best in the sand and in the pond. It did 20 rounds out of the pond water with no issues whatsoever, and it did 20 rounds through the sand with no issues whatsoever. It also ran a full mag, half submerged in mud, and then completely fail-boated with the complete submersion in mud, which happens to almost every gun because not only do you get it in the action itself, but you get it in the trigger group, and anything in the trigger group or inside the slide kills basically every gun dead. That being said, that's a bit of an unrealistic test, and for most realistic tasks, I see no problem with reliability whatsoever with this gun. As a matter of fact, I was happy that it did the pond and the sand. Those are the two most likely scenarios you'll run into, so I was really happy it ran through that. Now, I was concerned about reliability because of the speed and accuracy. The speed and accuracy of this gun, in my opinion, is unparalleled for the price point. I'm about to show you some guns in a minute that it compares to, not only with accuracy, but with speed, and they are much higher priced than this gun is. Now, the MSRP of $1,200, now I know you can't find it for that right now, but you will eventually if you wait a little while. The gun itself absolutely screams. I mean, I could shoot 6-inch plates at 50 yards with this. I could accurately hit it 100 yards, even with iron sights, but with the dot, it's made easy. And it was one of the fastest, if not the fastest compact gun I've ever shot on the range. Now, a part of that is bias. I love CZs. A part of that is just the sheer amount of trigger time I have. But the fact that I can shoot this in comparative times with stuff like the Wilson Combat EDC X9 and stuff like the DWX and even stuff like my Staccato C2 here, my beloved Staccato C2, I'm almost or just as fast with the Shadow 2. And you have to understand the Shadow 2 Compact comes in at less than half of an optics ready C2. Now, that accuracy is made easy by that unbelievable single action trigger pull, which I'll show you right here. You can see there, very, very little poundage, 2.5 pounds. And then the reset is very nice as well, allowing you those super fast, rapid shots. Now, I like the fact that it has the double action trigger because it's a buffer zone between you and accidentally shooting yourself in your junk, which I really like. First off, if you're carrying an appendix like this, and let's say you accidentally put your gun in the holster and it gets caught on it, you have a long time before that trigger is actually pulled. And the second thing you can do is when you are reholstering, you can place your thumb on top of the hammer like that, so you can feel it start to come up, and you can press it down and make sure that you don't accidentally shoot yourself in the junk, which is something you can do on this that you can't do on the 2011s. That particular reason is why this poor P07 looks the way it does, because this was my winter carry gun for many years, and it is an amazing gun, but it may very well get replaced by its more beautiful counterpart, the CZ Shadow 2 Compact. The other thing that it can do, obviously, is going to be, it's more touted, I guess, more people talk about it, but I think it's less reasonable to ever happen, is you also do get double strike capability. So if for whatever reason you have a hard primer, like a hard military primer, and it doesn't go off, you can then pull the trigger again and hit it a second time with that firing pin, and hopefully the round will go off. Now, I'm not sure if that is very usable in real life. I've heard it happen, I've heard it not, but the reality is that round going away is just a rack away. Along with the accuracy, obviously you have the cold hammer forged barrel, and then you have the ability to mount an optic, and you also have the standard iron sight. So if you don't want to pay an extra $500 on top of your $1,200 gun, put an optic on it, I totally get that. The included iron sights with it are excellent, and they're arguably my favorite iron sights on the planet. So if you want to put an optic on it, no problem. We shot it at 70 and 100 yards anyway, just with the iron sights. And obviously 10, 15 yards and in, not only do you not have an issue with dealing with the possible fail points of an optic, but iron sights are arguably more reliable in that distance anyway. So I like the iron sights that it come with. I absolutely love the trigger, and I love the optics mount. So that leads me to really good accuracy, but it could be different for you depending on your hand size, because sometimes distance to the trigger is a big deal when it comes to being able to run a gun successfully. And this gun fits my hand, and it might not fit yours. One of the best things about this gun is just the sheer speed you can pile rounds off. Now, not only does that make you look cool on the gram, but it also is more likely how a self-defense situation is going to go. You're probably not going to be taking a headshot at 100 yards. You're probably going to be popping off half a mag at 5 yards, and in which case this gun also excels. One, 2, 9. One, 2, 1. 1.19, and excels for a number of reasons that's made CZ famous for a long time. First off, let's start with the mythical internal slide rails. Now, whether they're outside or inside doesn't make too much of a difference. That being said, it does help lower the overall slide mass, and slide mass does matter when it comes to recoil impulse. Generally, not always, but the less slide mass you have going back and forth, the less weight you're going to feel when the round goes off. On top of that, not only do we have a very low slide mass, very close to your hand, especially for a double action gun. That's one thing you have to consider, is double action guns are generally very high. I mean, look at any of the SIGs, or even look at the P320 series, and you can see that that's a very low bore axis by comparison to some other guns. Now, we also have this big old dust cover on the front, which I like a lot, which is also present in the P07, and so are the internal slide rails, P01, I'm sorry. So you'll be getting those benefits with this as well, but it won't have nearly as good of a trigger, and it certainly won't be as slicked up as this is. So we have a great trigger, we have good reliability, we have good recoil impulse. Now, the recoil impulse is due to the dust cover. It's due to being able to get up on the gun really far with that awesome beaver tail and the good ergonomics, and then obviously the low slide mass as well. And then the texture also helps out with that, because even when you're wet, for example, like if you drop your gun in a pond on purpose and you have to shoot 20 rounds of it, Echelon didn't look like fucking Ariel took a shit on it when I pulled it out. It'll still stick in your hand because of how awesome those serrations are. Now, I like a lot of companies go with heavier serrations on the back and the front and a little bit less on the grips themselves, and the reason for that is because this is the part that rubs your stomach, and obviously this is the part you clamp on anyway, so I really like how CZ did that. Now, let's get into some comparisons with some other guns. First off, we do have the P01, which obviously is the base model. Well, it's not the base model, it's based on the CZ75, both of them are, but obviously they look very similar. First off, we have a better trigger guard, and we have a better undercut on the grip here, which makes makes the Shadow 2 more comfortable. Second off, it's going to have a much better trigger than the P01, and you're going to have, in my opinion, better ergonomics, because I've never liked the backward facing decocker on the P01, and I do prefer the minimalist safety on the Shadow 2, but that is going to be more of a personal preference. We obviously have a better look, better grips, and better serrations, and better texture on not only the slide but the grip with the Shadow 2 as well, and then we obviously have an included optic system. Now, it's going to come out for about $600 more. This is about $1,200 to $1,500. $2,100 right now, but you know, this is when we're making the video. And the P01 is usually found for between $500 and $700. Same basic stats on the P07. It's just basically the polymer framed version. And as you can see here, they're also very similar in size and features. P07 is another great carry gun. Then we have the gun that's probably the closest to the Shadow 2, which is going to be the DWX Compact, which also came out a few months ago, and it's made by the same company again. So as you can see, exact same ergonomics, just done a little bit differently. Slide release is bigger on the Shadow 2. I think the manual safety might actually be done a little bit better on the DWX. It's just easier to use and operate. It's more 1911-like, but it's still very good. Triggers are the same in poundage. However, the DWX is a single action only, which means you have to have the hammer cocked back in order for the gun to work. Now, that's not a big problem, but you don't have the double strike capability, and you don't have the ability to protect your junk with that double action. But the advantage you get out of that is you do get a consistent and very light and crisp trigger that is going to be as good or maybe even a little bit better than the Shadow 2 as far as the reset. But you are going to have to pay an MSRP of around $2,000 for the DWX, and I'm not aware of any that come with optics ready, which the Shadow 2 does. And also, I think there might be railed models of this now, but I haven't seen any, and this one also comes with a rail. So I would consider the Shadow 2 much better for the money, in my personal opinion. Now, obviously, the shooting experience is actually similar on both, although I would actually consider this to be a little bit faster. And I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's biased, but I do definitely shoot the Shadow 2 Compact faster, and I think maybe it's just because it does have a shorter slide, giving it less slide mass, but it has a heavier dust cover. So I think maybe there's just less mass reciprocating, and it's just more weight on the bottom, so it just shot better for me personally. Now, Wilson Combat, this is the EDC X9 subcompact, but it's very similar in size, even though it's a subcompact and the CZ is a compact. I would actually consider the CZ have less recoil, and obviously it's like 1/3 the money. So overall for the money, I would consider the Shadow a better gun, but the Wilson is no slouch in its own right, being an excellent choice for concealed carry. It's just over $3,000, making it unobtainable for most people. And then finally we have the Staccato C2, which is a 4-inch barreled version of a 2011, and it is an excellent gun. It is one of my favorite guns of all time, and they shoot very similar to me in my hands, and the CZ Shadow 2 is half the price. So again, pretty awesome. $2,500 for this guy, $1,200 for this one. All right, Shadow 2 size comparison with the P07. As you can see, basically the same size, same silhouette. P01. DWX can be a little bit longer. It's a 4.25 barrel and slide as opposed to the Shadow. Staccato C2. CZ P10C. You can see it's going to be just a little bit bigger in grip. And then the Wilson. Bigger grip, shorter slide. Now, parts compatibility with the Shadow 2 is vast. The optic systems, I believe, are the same. Safeties are the same. I don't know if the magazine releases are the same or trigger groups or anything like that, but most things are the same. Sights, anything you would change at your house is generally the same. The grips are obviously not. The grips are you're gonna have to get aftermarket grips, probably from Lock Grips right now. I think they're gonna make them, but other than that, I don't know anybody else. So although I don't see the reason why you would, they look sexy and they work very well. And they're very slim and minimalist by comparison to the large Shadow 2 grips, so you're not gonna notice it too much in carry. Now, some of the cons of the gun are obviously, first off, it's gonna be heavy. So by comparison to a lot of these guns, even let's say its polymer frame counterpart, this is going to be 3 ounces lighter than the Shadow 2. However, again, that is going to help you out in use of the firearm. Another thing that I didn't like about it quite as much as the Shadow 2 is that it is a manual safety gun, and you are going to have to operate it, and it is a little bit more difficult to operate that manual safety than on the standard Shadow 2, but it's also very minimalist, so it doesn't rub on your stomach, which is nice. So be aware that you can change that if you want to. We're going to be doing probably be another 5,000 round review of this pistol at some point, just simply because I'm probably just going to be training and shooting with it. Might even shoot a USPSA match with it and see how that goes. If you're interested in that stuff, we have another channel where we put testing footage and stuff like that, Outlaw Life, so check that out if you're interested. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please support our Oklahoma shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.
What kind of knot is that, babe?
The one on the gun is just a simple hitch, but the one on my wrist is a running bow line. It's a tree trimmer standard knot.
Get you a man that knows knots. You never know when he's gonna need to tie you up.
I'd rather not ventilate my nuts, so.
I would prefer you don't do that too.
Your nuts? You don't have nuts.
Your nuts! They're gonna come in handy someday.
Mine are anyway, not yours.
Oh my God.